Welcome to Cuelist Tutorials. In this tutorial, we're going to discuss adding cues. To add a cue to your script, you must first select the cue tool from the toolbar. You can click on the icon, or you can use the keyboard shortcut Q, the letter Q, to activate the tool. You must also have an active cue layer selected in order to add cues. You can see a previous guide for more information about active layers, but all your layers that you have access to will be active layers, and you can select the one you want. When you place a cue, it's going to automatically drop it into that active layer. You can always change what layer the cue is in later, but basically you want to be always thinking about where you primarily want to drop your cues and make that your active cue layer. Now, you have two options for adding a cue. The first is to double click anywhere on the PDF. This is going to drop a line in the location where you've clicked. So if we want to add something here, right in this spot right before the word accordion, I can double click. It's going to drop a cue. After it drops the cue, it's automatically going to focus into the first area of the cue. In this case, that's the cue number, and we can put a cue number in. And then if we have made visible both the cue number and the label, we can tab and go into the label and add we can add information. When I hit return or click outside of the cue, it will defocus the cue and the cue will be set. The second way to add a cue is to click and drag. So for instance, if we want to click here and drag, we will form a box around a cue, and again, it will focus in the cue number. We can set that up, and then we can tab over and add information. Once you place the cue marker, the cue itself is going to initially appear either on the right hand or left hand side of the page, and that is depending on the cue placement preference you've selected in the layer menu. Just a reminder here that if we go into the LX layer and we edit the cue properties, we can see that I have set the default cue placement on the right side of the page. We'll go over how to change that in another video, but just know it's going to default to whatever you choose on a layer by layer basis. You can see that the cues have been dropped onto the side of the page. When you are in the single page PDF view, you have another option for viewing your cues, and that is to move them into the margin. In order to move them into the margin, you just need to go up here to the toggle switch and click the toggle margin view, and the cues themselves will move into the margin. It's important to note that this is only available on a single page PDF view. If we switch into a double page view, it's going to move the cues back onto the page, and it is not possible to have the cues in the margin on a double page view. If we go back to the single page view, it will again move the cues back to the margin. Where the cues are, this whole side of information is unique to you as a user. So the placement of the cue is going to be visible for everybody, but whether we have the cues on the right or the left is going to be unique to you as a user. We're going to talk more about how to modify these cues later, but one last thing to note, that we have a couple different menus inside the cues. The first is this menu here. We can left click on the layer name. We're going to get some information about how to change the cue, and we'll go over that in the next tutorial. Or here on the colored box, if we left click on the colored box, we will have access to the attributes. And again, we'll talk more about that in the future. And finally, we can right click on this area to add a work note for this cue. Okay, that's all the information on adding cues. In our next tutorial, we'll talk about modifying cues and really discuss more of the information inside every cue. Thanks for watching.